You sit down to start something important. Maybe it's studying, work, or a task you've been avoiding all day. You tell yourself you'll begin in a minute. But then a quick check of your phone turns into scrolling. A small distraction turns into another. Before you realize it, an hour has passed and the task still hasn't started. What's strange is that procrastination isn't usually about laziness. Most of the time, people avoid tasks because their brain feels overwhelmed before they even begin. When a task looks long, complicated, or mentally draining, the brain naturally tries to escape that discomfort by shifting towards something easier or more immediately rewarding. But there's a simple psychological trick that can bypass that resistance in just 5 minutes. Without further ado, let's get into it. The 5 minute trick works because it changes how your brain perceives a task. Instead of telling yourself that you have to finish something that might take hours, you make a much smaller commitment. You simply tell yourself that you're going to work on the task for 5 minutes only, not a single minute more. This removes the pressure that usually makes the brain resist starting. When a task feels long and demanding, the mind naturally tries to avoid it, hoping you'll return to something safe like scrolling TikTok. But 5 minutes feels small and temporary, which makes it much easier to begin. Interestingly, even some neuroscientists have suggested this idea as a practical way to overcome procrastination. An Oxford neurologist once explained that lowering the perceived effort of a task can help the brain move past its initial resistance and enter a more focused state. Before starting those 5 minutes, remove the feeling of overwhelm that often comes from looking at too many tasks at once. A simple way to do this is by writing down everything you need to do on a piece of paper or in a notes app. Once you see all your tasks clearly, choose the one task that matters the most and focus only on that. Then make the task extremely specific. Instead of writing something vague like study physics, write something more precise such as study the first 5 pages of Chapter 8, Electromagnetic Waves. When tasks are too broad, the brain struggles to know where to begin, which increases procrastination. Making the task specific reduces that mental friction and makes the starting point much clearer. Once the task is defined, commit to working on it for just 5 minutes. When those 5 minutes begin, you may notice that the resistance you felt earlier slowly starts to fade. Your attention shifts from avoiding the task to actually engaging with it. This is where momentum often begins to build. There's also an interesting psychological concept called the Zeigarnik effect, which explains why starting a task can make it easier to continue. This effect describes how the brain tends to remember unfinished tasks and feels a natural pull to complete them. In other words, once you begin something, your mind becomes more mentally invested in finishing it. This is why many people find that after the first few minutes of work, continuing the task becomes much easier than expected. What felt overwhelming before now simply feels like the next step in front of you. But even if your brain doesn't feel like continuing after those 5 minutes, that's completely fine. You can simply stop, take a short 5 minute break, and then come back for another 5 minute session. The goal is not to force long hours of work, but to make the process feel manageable and less overwhelming. Over time, as 5 minutes starts to feel easier, you can gradually increase the duration if you want. But it's important not to skip the breaks because the breaks are what keep the task from feeling too mentally draining. They help your brain reset and prevent the pressure that usually leads to procrastination. Finally, once the task is completed, reward yourself with something you enjoy. It could be something simple like having a snack, watching a short video, or going for a walk. This creates a positive association in your brain, where completing tasks becomes connected with a small reward. Over time, this makes it easier for your mind to approach work without the same level of resistance or stress. That is it for today, guys. If any part of this video felt relatable to you, drop a comment and share your experience. I read every single comment, so I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.